Hello friends. Now, if you hear a bit of snoring during this video, it's the cat, right? But this video is about my first experiment with power cables, and I saw a bit of an analogy with tube rectifiers as well. So that's the topic, and it'll be a bit of a surprise winner because I've tested this only with my power amp at the moment. And quick answers first. This cable actually sounds the best, and this cable was designed and constructed for a particular topic. And so how does this cable come about, and what was I trying to do? I'll tell you now. So first of all, there was a whole discussion on the Real World Audio channel. So Janos runs a beautiful channel, link in the description, and he had a discussion about cables, and there was quite a debate under his video, me included, that was a bit of skeptical about cables, and especially power cables. Now, I'm not skeptical about his interlinks. By the way, if you look at this, he on his channel has something about the CSSWP interconnect. I use his construction, and I think it's one of the best cheap ways to actually create an interconnect. So I have some experience with what Janos is saying and what the reality is behind it, and it usually coincides quite a lot, his experience. So I used some of his advice to create this channel, but then also to create this cable. But I also watched another, at the same time, around that time, I also watched a video from Larry from Real Hifi Help. And now Larry has a lot of experience in the high-end components and combining them. So not so much the DIY side, where Janos is an expert, but he has a lot of high-end experience. And he, in a video said, and I'll link it in the description, he said that sometimes with the thicker cable can produce a one-dimensional sound. So it's very hard and slamming and in your face. And then once you reduce the size of the live wire, you can actually, it can become more musical and more gentle and more subtle and so on. And that general direction between a high conductivity cable, so a big cable, and a small cable, I have been able to detect, but not in the order that you probably expected, that this big cable with the big plugs does it. No, actually, in my amp, this sounds more dynamic. Well, this cable with its reduced live wire, so I used 2 square millimeter in the ground and the neutral, and only 1 square millimeter in the live wire. Now, my amp takes 50 watts, so that's a fifth of an amp, fifth of an amp that actually goes through this cable. So this is more than enough. The copper is there, like you know, there's no sense of that the cable would heat up with that kind of power draw. So my power amp, the Type 47 power amp that I just built and have clips on. However, when I connect it up in this cable, it is just the sound changes a lot compared to this cable. And I'm talking the same type of difference that you could hear in my comparison videos on for my Type 47 amp, how the sound changes. It's on the same level. So it's much rounder, it's much less dynamic, it is almost more destined to be background music. Yeah, softer, rounder, mellow, maybe a bit spiritless even when I put this cable in. And the interesting bit is that if you compare it to rectifier tubes, and I haven't tried this myself just yet, so I've got a Type 80 tube rectifier here that produces a lot of voltage drop, and then we've got the EZ81. But generally people say that when you use the EZ81, which has a low voltage drop, conducts, you know, it's quite efficient as a rectifier relatively for a tube rectifier, that the sound becomes much more you get a bigger presentation, you get more heft, you get more dynamics. And that seems to be a little bit in line with what is happening with the cable. So this 10 amp kettle plug that is made to conduct 10 amps at 240 volts probably has bigger, maybe even bigger gauge wires. I'm not exactly, I haven't opened it up yet, but it's in this case with this limited wire, with my amp, it produces that. But I can sort of see that if you have an amp, maybe a transistor amp based amp, and it's maybe too dynamic, it's maybe too exaggerated, that having a different cable like this where you limit the live wire could actually be one of the strategies that you can say, I like everything about the amp, but it's just a bit this, and then the cable could actually just tune it out. So depending on the type of cable that you change it into, you can either move the sound in one direction or in another direction, even apart from things like RF problems and so on. This is more about conductivity probably. So I can confirm what he was saying, that he is not nuts, because some people can declare him nuts in the comments. But so Larry from Hifi Help, this is exactly what he said as I found, but in my amp, it is not the direction. My amp is far more, I find, more musical with the better conductivity. So the next thing I will do, and then I'll probably make a more comprehensive video, both shortly with the result, but also maybe with the sound clip, is I will swap over these cables. So I'll use the thick cables for the live wire and the neutral, and the thin the thin cable becomes the ground wire, and then check what kind of difference that makes. So that should confirm this trend at least. So that was this video, and a little bit of what's coming up. I hope you found this interesting. I think it's better to experiment with these things firsthand, and rather than just dismiss them out of hand. Sometimes you just need to dismiss it because you've got other things, or you don't want to add that complexity in your head or something. But in the end, you just, when too many people that have the experience say you must pay attention, generally you have to pay attention, and to get a bit of a feel for it, it is always good to experiment. And that's what my channel is about, is just to share you my experiments, so that you don't have to do all the experiments yourself, and you win some time, and you have some head start and some insight without actually having to go through everything, because not everybody has the time or the means to experiment with a lot of things, so including myself, by the way. So you have to pick and choose. But I found it a very useful experiment, and I found the analogy with rectifier tubes quite interesting. It deserves a bit more follow-up. I will follow this up further, but I hope this was interesting nonetheless by itself. Thank you for tuning into my channel. Please subscribe if you haven't, and if you like this type of research. And yeah, that's it. I'll hope to catch you in the next video. And until then, have a brilliant day, have a brilliant week, have a brilliant night, and take care. Bye bye.